You've spelunked into the Matt Cave. Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Matt Cave. Thank you all so much for spelunking on by. This week was a rough week for all three schools, but mostly for Utah and Utah State. BYU they surprised everyone. Well, I'll get into it, but they surprised everyone, really. And an update on where I've been as far as my stream is concerned and what to look for moving forward, as well as kind of giving you an idea of what my fantasy football team looks like. So not a lot on the gaming side of things right now, because if I were to do something with video games this week, it would just be another rant of me about how bad the video game review industry has gotten. And you've heard that a lot from me. I don't know if there's any nuance or anything new I can add to the conversation there. But I might say something towards the end. It's been on my mind pretty much all week with the recent release of the new Star Wars game, Star Wars Outlaws, and then the release of a new Warhammer game, Warhammer 40K Space Marines 2. And the difference of reviews on those. So I might go into it. But anyway, thank you all so much for being here. I appreciate you all. Please do me a favor if you haven't already. And that is to rate, review, like, subscribe, 5 stars, thumbs up, wherever it is. However you listen, helps me out a bunch. You guys have already done a lot for me. And so I'm just asking for a little bit more. As my coaches always said at the end of practice, just a little bit more. That's kind of where we're at now. So thank you all for being here. I am on Facebook. That is the Matt Cave Podcast. I'm also on Twitter or X. That is at the Matt Cave Pod. And then I am on YouTube, which is the Matt Cave Podcast, all one word. And then lastly on twitch.tv/Matt's Cave. Matt's Cave. M-A-T-T-S Cave. Because the Matt Cave was taken somehow. All right. So let's dive into things. Let's first start off with the BYU game against SMU on Friday night. And honestly, that game was one of the ugliest games I think I've ever seen BYU get a win in. The defense, okay, I'll start with the good. The defense impressed me. They really did. SMU was all hyped up about their double quarterback situation, how they had 2 quarterbacks that they believe were both starters, and Kevin Jennings and Preston Stone, and BYU made them both look pretty darn bad. And to give you an idea, SMU last year with Preston Stone at quarterback was one of the best offenses in the country. And BYU made them look silly. They did give up over 100 yards rushing again, but the passing, there was no passing. I was impressed. They got to the quarterback again. 3 sacks. They've already almost eclipsed last season's sack total in 2 games. Holy moly. There's some TFLs, tackles for loss, 8. What is this defense? What am I watching? That's the good. The defense is getting to the quarterback. Between Tyler Batty and Isaiah Glasker, Blake Mangelson, there's some guys, there's some dudes out there. Obviously, we don't have the names like we have in the past. Brady Papinga, Cameron Jensen, Kyle Van Noy, Fred Warner. But these guys kind of just go out and do their job, and they do it very well. Jack Kelly is a monster. He is. I didn't think he was that fast when he's that big. He was going after SMU quarterback Kevin Jennings like crazy, and this kid is 6'2", 240, and he runs like he's a quarterback, like he's 6'2", 190. He's getting after it. So this defense, I don't know if they're legitimate yet, because I don't know what the future holds for SMU, but they already look better this year than they did last year, and that's big. That's really big, because they last year they had Max Tooley, they had Tyler Batty still, they had Ben Bywater, and there was high hopes. This year, there's no hopes. BYU's picked to finish next to last, only above Houston. So that's that's kind of what they're going into, and the defense looked good. Now, let's flip the script here and go to the offense. I don't know what, if anything, the coaches see in Jake Retzlaff. I don't know. I don't see it. I see a guy who has happy feet, who cannot stay calm in the pocket when he has one, and he's already had more clean pockets than Keaton Slovis had all last year. And he makes boneheaded decisions. And if you were a young quarterback, you can kind of get away with saying that. You know, he's not an 18-year-old kid like Isaac Wilson is for the Utes. This guy has been through junior college. He was the top junior college quarterback recruit when he came out. He played 4 games at the end of last year, and he started and played the whole game last week against Southern Illinois. So why does he keep making the same mistakes? Why doesn't he trust his receivers? Why doesn't he just take the sack? Those are the questions that I had the entire game this week. And the answers to those questions are not going to get better. As we go through this season, as long as Retzlaff is the quarterback, there's going to be no offense at all. I don't understand how you look at how he finished last season. 0-4. Terrible displays the whole way through. And you go, yep, that's our guy. When you have Gary Bohannon, who, yes, was coming off an injury and has bounced around at a few schools, but you bring him in because you think he's good enough to start. That's why you bring in a super senior transfer. You don't bring him in to be an extra coach. And now Gary Bohannon has been nothing but class the entire time. They said they were going to split the snaps at the first few games, that they wanted to see them both under game, in-game reps for both of them. But Gary Bohannon went to the coaches and said, don't do that. Pick one or the other. If it's him, it's him. If it's me, it's me. Whatever decision is made, I'm going to be a good teammate. That's a leader. I don't know if Jake Retzlaff would have been that demure or that supportive of somebody else in the quarterback room. This kid is not good. He's not. So moving forward, they're going to be wasting that receiver room. Chase Roberts is legitimate. He's going to be playing on Sundays. Keanu Hill, if he can show what he can do, which he can't with Retzlaff at quarterback, but if he gets an opportunity to showcase his talent, he's playing on Sunday. LJ Martin will eventually be playing on Sunday, even though he got hurt again this last week with an ankle injury. Could be a high ankle sprain. Nobody knows. They haven't said. There's talent on this offense. Not enough talent, to get to a bowl game, but there's talent there still. And they're wasting it behind this quarterback who just can't play the position. He's too short. He gets balls batted down at the line. And then he just doesn't take a sack. He throws the ball up in the air. Obviously, that's going to get intercepted every time. So my rant here is the same as it was pretty much all last season. Aaron Roderick is still trying to prove that he is smarter than the rest of us. Sometimes, and pretty much all last season and now coming into this season, Aaron, you're not. Doing the smart thing is not going with your gut. It's looking at the stat sheet, it's looking at the performance of the offense, and looking at the disgusted body language of your wide receivers coming off the field after yet another 3-and-out. Oh, man. Jake Retzlaff needs to be benched, and he needs to be benched yesterday. He never should have won the job. He missed wide-open receivers all last week against an FCS opponent. Against SMU, he was still missing wide-open receivers. There needs to be a change, and I'm calling for it now. But they're not going to do it. Gary Bohannon is the better quarterback. 100%. All day, every day. He's just as, if not more, athletic in the run game than Retzlaff. So that, and this is going to be the last point I'm making about BYU before I transfer over to Utah. That makes me wonder how just not intense the BYU defense was practicing during spring and fall camps. that Jake Retzlaff looked more impressive than Gary Bohannon, or, air quotes there. Because these first two games, the defenses looked pretty solid. Against SMU, they looked great. They didn't allow a single touchdown. It was 5 field goals and a couple of fourth down stops. Like, bend, don't break, and they were blitzing. Oh, glory be. Glory be to heaven. They are blitzing, and they're getting results. As far back as I can remember, BYU has always been bend, don't break, rush 3, drop 8. Try to confuse the quarterback with different coverage looks, but we never blitz. Guess what? You started blitzing the past 2 weeks. You've already almost surpassed your sack total from last year. And if the numbers keep going the way they're going, you'll have more sacks this season than you'll have had the past 2 seasons combined. Okay, rant over for BYU. They are 2-0, very luckily. Against Wyoming, it should be another win just because of talent. Wyoming is not a very good team this year. Although it would please me to no end to see Jake Retzlaff get picked off 4 times and BYU get blown out, just so that my point can be made. But if LJ Martin is healthy, and if Hinckley Rapati is healthy, they're just going to hand the ball off like 40 times and walk away with like a 17-3 win. That's what it's probably going to be. All right, let's move on to Utah. Boy, was that a game, huh? That first quarter was so much fun. Utah just dominated every facet of the game. The first quarter and a half, really. Baylor couldn't do anything. They were on skates. Their heads were spinning. It looked like they were about to drown. And then a dirty hit. It was a dirty hit. It was. The former Oregon defender, Baylor defender, threw Cam Rising into the water cart. He threw him into it. The referees were bad. I don't know. Maybe we got leftovers from the Pac-12 in that game, but woof. The referees missed a lot in that game. And what I saw was a dirty hit. He extended his hands. He pushed Cam Rising into the cart. Because Baylor knew, just like everybody in the country knows, if Cam Rising goes down, Utah's offense disappears. And it did. It disappeared. For 2+ quarters under Isaac Wilson, they barely eclipsed 90 yards of total offense. And depending on the health of Cam Rising, now, according to Coach Whittingham, in the immediate post-game interview, he said we aren't too worried about it. It doesn't seem to be something serious. It was serious enough that you had to bench him for the second half of a game against a Baylor team that was on its way back into the game. You could sense the momentum shift even before Cam Rising got hurt. So it was serious enough to bench him there. And now, with the history between Utah State and the other 2 in-state schools in those games, I might be tempted to keep Cam Rising out of that game too, because you know those kids are going to be trying to hurt him because Utah State's not good enough to beat Utah. Sorry, Aggie fans, it's just the truth. Once is an accident, twice is a coincidence, 3 times is a pattern. And Utah State has hurt a BYU or Utah quarterback pretty much every season they've played over the past decade and a half. I swear, it feels like that. So if we look at things in this Baylor game, the first quarter and a half couldn't have gone any better. Blocked field goal return for a touchdown. Cam Rising looking like a Heisman candidate, picking apart the Baylor defense. The running game, getting 4 to 5 to 6 yards per carry. Cam Rising gets hurt. The air gets sucked out of the stadium. And that's a knock on Utah fans too. Like, I get it. Cam Rising is your season, but your guys are still out there giving 100%, playing their guts out, and you are silent? That's when you have to be louder than ever to support your guys out there giving everything they've got. So there's a knock on you Ute fans there. I get it. Cam Rising is your season, but you're still in a game. It's a close game. You got to be loud. You got to support your defense. You got to be able to support Isaac Wilson. You got to have it. So that's another knock I had. The air got sucked out of the stadium. Trust me, I am a recovering BYU fan. I remember when Taysom Hill got hurt those 2 seasons. I know exactly what the Ute fans are going through. Potential Heisman candidate quarterback goes down early in the season. I've been there. The positives from this game. Utah's defense is for real. I say it's a top 5 defense, if not a top 3 defense in the country. They are deeper this year than they were last year. Ute fans, you're going to get sick and tired of hearing that from the commentators, but it's true. That means if some guys go down, you still have enough on the defensive side of the football to still dominate games. Van Fillinger, Connor O'Toole, those guys are for real. There's a reason I called out Fillinger. I should have called out O'Toole. That guy was in the backfield every freaking snap. The linebacker group, Lander Barton, Karene Reed, these guys are awesome. So the defense is fine. You still have Morgan Scalley, best defensive coordinator in the country. You cannot convince me otherwise. And the defense will be fine moving forward. They will. There's no team left on Utah's schedule that makes me worried that defense will give up more than about 21 points. Not a single team. Not Oklahoma State, definitely not Arizona, because Utah and Arizona know each other very well. Not TCU, certainly not BYU. And, yeah, like Houston, worst team in the Big 12. Arizona State, second to worst team in the Big 12. So, yeah, Utah's defense is going to be fine. The offense. What do you do with an 18-year-old true freshman coming into the game for a guy who is almost a decade older than him? I don't know. You almost have to have 2 different playbooks, which is a strain on every other position group. Because Isaac Wilson, while he has all the talent in the world, has had no time to put it together. None. Eventually, Isaac Wilson is going to be a very good quarterback if he's given the time to develop. Much like Zach Wilson in the pros, if he's thrown in too soon, he's going to develop bad habits. He's going to start staring at the rush instead of his routes, and then his feet will never get right. That's what happened to Zach Wilson in the pros. I could see that happening to Isaac Wilson in college, except the offensive line for Utah is nowhere near as bad as the offensive line for the Jets. So Isaac Wilson is your quarterback, probably against Utah State. I could see them doing that. That's good news and bad news, because in a game against a team like Utah State, you know your defense is going to almost shut them out. So you're allowed to kind of do things you're not normally going to do with a true freshman quarterback. You can let it rip. You can tell him, just throw it. Money Parks is down there somewhere. Micah Pittman's down there somewhere. Just let it rip. If they're not there, you got Brant Keithy on a 5-yard out. It's pretty simple stuff for the kid to process. So I could see them doing that. If I were a fan, I would want Cam Rising to sit this next game out. Give him 2 weeks to heal before Big 12 play opens. You know what you've got with Cam Rising by now. You've had 2 halves. Pretty much you've had a full game of seeing what he can do. He's busted out a big run, so you know his knee is okay. He can hit every throw in your playbook. You don't need to play him against Utah State. Isaac Wilson, just like Coach Whittingham said in his postgame press conference, just needs reps. He just needs playing time. I think they should. But obviously Kyle Whittingham has been there for 2+ decades, and I'm sitting in my mom's basement. So we'll see what they do. But that's how I would approach it. And I think that's the smart way to do it. All right, so I'm not going to say much here about your team, Aggies fans. I told you I'd go easy on you this year. It was a 48-0 shellacking by USC. Yeah, there's not much to say there. There's not many positives to come from that game. Bryson Barnes barely eclipsed 100 yards passing. He was always turnover prone at Utah. He's turnover prone again with Utah State. He fumbled. He threw an interception. The running game, it was okay. Russell Faison, pretty good. Pretty good. But overall, just overmatched. I mean, pretty much predictable, right? Mountain West team against a Big Ten team. Predictable. And it's still so weird to say Big Ten team for USC and UCLA. It makes no sense. It's like Cal being in the ACC. What? But tell me more about how you care about the student athlete. Give me a break. Okie dokie. So, a couple of updates. First, I'm just going to do my rant. So, this past week plus, 2 games came out. Star Wars Outlaws, which looks pretty fun. It doesn't look like a perfect game, but it does look like you'll get your money's worth. Where you play as a bounty hunter. It's not a Star Wars Jedi fantasy. You are a bounty hunter out doing stuff on planets that technically have no load screen, but people have noticed a load buffer, whatever. And then the other game, which is not nearly as widely known, Warhammer 40k Space Marines 2. Now, to give you some history on the second game there, I worked at GameStop when the first one came out, and we could not keep that game on the shelves. We couldn't. Anytime we got it in, it was gone the same day. So while the game wasn't perfect, it was still beloved. I believe it got around an 85-ish in Game Informer. Rest in peace, Game Informer. I'll be doing an episode on that. But it was a solid game. And obviously it had its fan base. And Warhammer definitely has its fan base. And so PC Gamer did a review. Obviously, PC Gamer reviews a lot of games. And I've never shouted PC Gamer out as a reviewer I trust, and you're about to find out why. So they gave their scores to the 2 games. Star Wars Jedi Outlaws got around a 73. Said it was a fun game, it's got its bugs, but if they fix them in the future, it will be a very fun game. I agree. From what I've seen, I agree. That's a solid review. Now let's move on to the Warhammer review. They gave Warhammer 40k Space Marines 2 a 60 out of 100. You know a game that had a higher review rating than that from PC Gamer? The Smeagol game. The Gollum game. One of the worst games ever made. Received a higher score than Warhammer 40k Space Marines 2. That Gollum game got a 63. Do you see a problem there? Now, there are obviously rumors afoot that, Ubisoft paid for the review, or the studios behind Warhammer did not pay for the review, or the reviewer for Warhammer has it out against Warhammer games, all this other stuff. What I see is what has been happening to all of the, air quotes, big video game reviewers, and that it's the editing staff putting these reviewers on games they normally never would play. And I disagree with that. You have to have reviewers that are used to playing that certain genre of game. You're not going to throw a Stardew Valley player into Call of Duty and expecting a good review. It's dumb. So that's probably what happened, is the reviewer for Warhammer has never really played Warhammer before, has a cursory knowledge like I do of the universe, and isn't the biggest fan of, I don't know how else to say it, but like gory games. Because believe you me, Warhammer 40k Space Marines 2 is very gory. Incredibly gory. Definitely not for anybody below the age of 17. Parents, be on the lookout for that. Star Wars Jedi Outlaw, T for teen, go nuts. It's your average Star Wars universe, go nuts. I think on sale, I haven't played it yet. I'm still neck deep in Final Fantasy and World of Warcraft. I don't know if I'll ever be able to pull myself out. But from what I've seen of these 2 games, and I've watched them, I have them on a separate screen, like when I'm streaming or when I'm editing or when I'm doing research for the show. I have them on a separate screen, and I'm listening, and I watch people play. And the people that I watch play Warhammer absolutely adore the game. And the one that I've been watching in particular is not a huge Warhammer fan. He's a lot like me. We're aware of it. We know about it, and we know that it's a very deep-rooted lore wide-ranging story, kind of hard to get into, but we know that the fan base is huge and they are very loyal. And everything that he has said about the game has been glowing. He said it's one of the most polished 1.0 launches of a game he's seen in a long time. And that's saying something. Meanwhile, Star Wars Outlaws is incredibly buggy, like you'd expect pretty much now from Ubisoft, which is a shame because in the past, Ubisoft games were immaculate. Think back to Assassin's Creed Black Flag, Assassin's Creed 3, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood 2. Those games were immaculate on launch. And now, whenever they launch a game, it's almost like a beta tester game where you're supposed to go out and find the bugs. Even though you don't need to go out and find them, they're just, bam, right in your face. So the problem here is there's not really a video game review site you can go to anymore where you can go, yep, that's the one. They're straightforward. You know, they don't have their biases. Like, I try very hard to not have my biases. And if I have a bias against a game, I let you know before I give my review. And then if I am a fan of the game, like I am with NCAA football, like I am with Pokemon, Borderlands, World of Warcraft, I let you know before I give you the review. I say, I've been a fan, I've been playing these for years. So there needs to be a seismic shift at these video game review sites that I don't think will ever happen. Because these places take a lot of money from these studios to be able to keep themselves running. And I get it. They give a lot of money for ad revenue to these video game sites like PC Gamer, IGN, Kotaku, all of these places. And that's what keeps the lights on. But that also means the reviews are not as transparent or as fair as they should be. All right, so that's my rant on the current state of video game reviewing and why there's a problem. There's also another rant to be had later about video game journalism and about streamer journalism and taking stuff out of context, which is not just that, it's media in general, but that rant is for another day. Now, update for my stream. Last week I missed a lot of time. There was a lot of stuff going on at my house. There was a holiday. This coming week, it should be all systems go, no problems. I should be there every day. So I do hope to see you there, twitch.tv/mattscave, or I'll also be multi-streaming on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/the-matt-cave-podcast, I believe is what it is. But you can find it via my Facebook page. You can find my links there, or my links are also on my Twitter page. And it should be more Final Fantasy. I'm having so much fun playing Final Fantasy right now. But I might switch it up. If you want me to watch me play something else, you want me to review a game live on stream, I'll do that too. Let me know. And lastly, my fantasy team. My fantasy team name is Big Trouble in Kittle, China. And my team, I'm quietly confident about, although this week it's not going too great. Overall on the season, I think it'll be fine. My quarterback, Joe Burrow. My fantasy league is weird. I've got a couple of guys in there that love to troll, and so they pick the quarterbacks in the first round so that there's none later on in the draft. That's what happened this time. So quarterback is Joe Burrow. We'll see how that goes. Now that Jamar Chase is playing again, I think. Anywho, wide receivers are Tyreek Hill, Puka Nacua, of course. You know your guy had to go for Puka. And Marvin Harrison Jr., the rookie wide receiver, son of Hall of Famer Marvin Harrison, rookie receiver at Arizona. I might regret that pick. I don't know what the chemistry between him and Kyler Murray is like, but first week of the season doesn't look too great. I'm going to have to monitor that situation. Running backs, Devon Achane, the speedster with Miami. He was out injured for the majority of last season, but when he was healthy, bundle of fun. So he's my one running back. David Montgomery, the other running back for Detroit. He's the goal line guy. He's the guy they call on for short yardage situations. He was pretty much the best available when I got him. George Kittle, of course, had to get him. He is my tight end. And then my kickers and defense, I just play those week-to-week streaming options. based off of matchups and whatnot. I don't really like to use picks on them. My bench has the starting running back for New England, Ramondre Stevenson. I probably should have started him. And then I also have Javonte Williams, the starting running back for Denver. Jaden Daniels is my backup quarterback. I might actually have to start him over Joe Burrow as we go out this season. Christian Watson, the wide receiver for Green Bay. I might have to dump him because Jordan Love is now injured for a lot of the season. Taysom Hill. I always have Taysom Hill. It's a ritual for me. And Zach Moss, the starting running back for Cincinnati, taking over for Joe Mixon. So I don't really have all my eggs in one offense's basket. I have a lot within Miami's, but it's a home run hitting offense, and so both guys will probably hit home runs. But let me know what your fantasy team is, what your team name is, how you think my team's going to do. I'd love to hear it. Hit me up on my Facebook, on Twitter, or in my chats when I'm streaming. Love to talk to you about it. But that is the episode this week. Thank you all so much for being here. And I will see you all next week when we spelunk back into the Matt Cave. BYU football undefeated against SMU. Did you know that? I didn't.